didn't write your resume, but civil rights made somebody read your resume.
But listen, D-E-I. Come on, Dominique, share some words with us. Welcome, Dominique Sharpen, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. So my article is talking about, as we know, we've been protesting DEI. We've been outside all over the nation, really, talking about this, raising our voices around keeping DEI alive. And on Friday, the White House Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion announced it is closing its office.
Wait, what? Wait, what? Wow.
Yes. Congress's DEI office is disbanded as part of $1.2 trillion in funding package. It's a win for the Republicans as diversity office is dissolved and its director announces that she is leaving. Congress is facing a government funding deadline that passed on, I believe it was yesterday, when was the 22nd? Day before yesterday. So that was the deadline for the funding deadline for them to submit the funding. Speaker Mike Johnson was able to get enough votes to pass a massive government spending bill nearly 12 hours before the funding bill expired. Conservative Republicans were not afraid of forcing a shutdown and almost tanked the vote, saying it's not fiscally responsible. So tucked into the sprawling $1.2 trillion of government funding bill that passed in the House on Friday was a provision that shut down the House Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Effective on today, the office will close as of today, with some of its staff transitioning over to the newly formed Office of Talent Management. So the DEI staff is moving over to the Office of Talent Management. The nonpartisan Office of Diversity and Inclusion was first formed in March of 2020 and supports diverse hires with things like resume workshops and professional development fairs. It was a victim of the movement from Republicans to eliminate DEI programs across the country. On behalf of ODI, it has been an honor to help ensure that the United States Congress embodied a qualified and representative workforce that reflected the country's vast tapestry. That was Director Sesha Joy Moon said in a statement. But just 12 hours ahead of the government funding deadline that would have triggered a shutdown, Speaker Mike Johnson shepherded a $1.2 trillion spending package through the House. Now it heads to the Senate, where a successful vote is expected soon. In the interim, some of these offices, one notably being the Office of DEI, is closing. Now, we have a lot that we can say here. Obviously, we know how these cards are being played. The question is exactly like how far is too much before enough is enough, right? So we're seeing that DEI offices are closing. We're seeing in corporations, they're making amendments and things to overrule DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, arms of corporation and certain corporation or offices in certain corporations. But now to the White House, this is getting to be a little overwhelming. It's very scary. And if Congress can override and shut this office down, then imagine what other surprises we have coming before us before we get to Election Day. So I just wanted to mention that, and also mention that there is no real plan of action in terms of what they're going to do with this office being closed. We know that the staff is moving over to Talent Management Division. I don't know what that is exactly, but I think that this is clearly an indication that we're in a lot of trouble. We're in deeper trouble than we think we are. And I think that there needs to be a succinct plan of action to deal with how these things are, just like the ripple effects, how these things keep happening. What do y'all think we should do?
Well, Ron, are you there? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can't see. There you are. There you are. What do
Hey.
you think? Your rally tomorrow.
The pickets tomorrow, yeah. We're again at Bill Ackman's office, who is one of the pioneers, right-wing activists who are basically taking on trying to get rid of DEI programs around the country. With Claudine Gay, he targeted at Harvard for her resignation. And then he said, we're going to take on DEI. That's the next thing to go down. And we see that the Republican Party and also the complicity of basically liberalists have shown that our DEI rights is not something that is important to them. They're claiming erase racism. They're claiming, again, in the article that Dominique read, that the budget is being ill-used, so they wiped out the Office of Diversity and Equity in Congress. And so it's important that we continue to tell our history, because we know that in our history is the truth. The truth is that we didn't start off at the same playing field as everyone else, that our rights came through the blood, it came through fighting. They, by law, kept us from reading. By law, they kept us from opportunities. So through Civil Rights Act and through affirmative action, these were put in place to try to repair what was done to us. And yet, even with these programs, we were still behind the 8 ball. So for them to come in and say, oh, this is reverse racism, or oh, this is not fair, or this isn't promoting the best outcome, it seems that when we get in office, or when we get on the playing field, when we get on the basketball court, that we always are the best. And so we know that this is just a ploy to continue to strengthen the apartheid of America as it continues to happen in front of our face. And so we have to do something. And so every Thursday we've been picketing in front of Bill Ackman's office, 11th Avenue, 787 11th Avenue. And it's from 12 to 1. And we invite everyone to come out. This is only the first part of our strategy. We will continue to fight to our rights, because the rights weren't given to us. We had to fight for them. And by law, they kept us back. So by law, they should do something to at least repair what was done and help us get where we need to be.
Well, this is another wording for affirmative action. That's what it is, which is to make up the wounds of the past. All right, Ron, I know you have to run. Graham, are you there? Graham? Ron, we'll let you go.
I'm listening.
Well,
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilchrist. Yep.
You have anything else to say before you go?
Hopefully you're going to come out tomorrow too, right? And help shake up this country from 11th Avenue. Because, and also our brother, Mr. Leroy, that's there, and all that is watching, because, and it's not just this Thursday. We're going to stay on this till we see the things change. We know that the system is not bigger than us. We're big enough to change the system. We've done it before. There's this plea that the court is majority Confederate. When we got our rights in the 60s and the 50s, the court was Confederate. So we understand that we fought this fight before, we won it, and we'll do it again in this time and generation with the elders leading. So if you guys can definitely come out and help picket, that would also be of great value.
All right. I'll be there tomorrow.
God bless you.
I'll definitely be there tomorrow.
God bless you too, son.
Anybody else that wants?
Bundle up, guys.
All
right. See you there.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Graham, are you anywhere near?
Hello.
Yeah. Did you hear?
Finally.
You heard most of that, right?
No, I just got in about 30 seconds ago.
Ah, okay. We just said the whole thing about DEI and how they canceled the office. They closed down the office. I sent you the roll-in of Dominique.
Yeah.
Well, that was McHenry. He's running. He's leading the charge down the picketing in front of 787 11th Avenue,
10th
54th
Avenue.
Street. Every Thursday at 12 o'clock. Anybody decides to join the actions against racism, white supremacy, Donald Trump, the poster child for racism and all the evils of the planet, really. All the garbage that's going on. Any comments?
Well, you can buy a Bible if you want.
Should have that already.
You know, that guy, you know, he's boasting of the King James
Oh,
Bible.
yeah. Oh, I forgot
And
about that.
he doesn't even know that King James was a black man. You know, it's unbelievable, the level of ignorance. And then you have
Well, nobody
people,
knows that.
right,
Nobody
the
knows.
Stuarts ruled England for 340-something years, and he hasn't got a clue. You know, we need to understand that history is repeating itself. The rebel rousing from January 6th, we had a similar situation in 1877, following an election when Samuel J. Tilden of New York was calling for patriots to come to Washington in a contested election. And that was the compromise of 1876. So in that compromise,
1876.
the Tilden went back.
Tilden,
he
yeah,
didn't
right.
stage the big
That's the
ruckus,
Tilden. Yeah.
but they cut a deal.
Yeah.
And it allowed the Confederates to come back and take positions of authority in government.
They took away the soldiers. They took away the soldiers.
Yeah,
Watching.
Sherman and the 40 acres and a mule, all of that went out the door.
Yeah.
That was General Sherman who talked about 40 acres and a mule. And the Confederates were allowed to come back as sheriffs, as marshals, as judges, after taking up arms against the government.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing we're seeing today. And in the process, they said, we're not going to continue with any of the programs relative to the condition of the Negro. So Reconstruction was done and Jim Crow was in. So it's going for a second try. If this man is allowed to take office and give amnesty to the rebel rousers that were in the Capitol, it's only history repeating itself.
Well, we can't let that happen.
I suggest we vote.
Oh, that's the main theme.
Yeah.
Black people voting, understanding the problem, not blaming all white people for the problems of a few. And I'm going to go back to history and how we're caught up in this quagmire of not understanding our history and who we are as people. Let's run item 3, Osiris. I want the first Egyptian god, a black man, which most people don't understand. Ancient Egypt was before Greece. And the modern European thinks that civilization started with the Greeks in 300 BC. And the Greeks learned from the Egyptians. Herodotus tells the story of how he learned from teachers like Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes. That's where the Hermes came from.
Abydos, Egypt, February 2011. 300 miles south of Cairo, looters target what was once the most sacred site to the ancient Egyptians during the time of the pharaohs. It was here that Egypt's first rulers were buried, and the earliest forms of hieroglyphs were found, as well as an inscription bearing the names and chronology of the first kings of ancient Egypt. Abydos was considered sacred to the god Osiris, Lord of the Dead, and Egypt's first otherworldly ruler. According to ancient legends, his dismembered head was buried at the site.
So who was Osiris? Was he simply an ancestor of the ancient Egyptians, or was he a god that descended to Earth, from the sky world? Obviously, we cannot say today, but we know he was said to have existed in an age that was known as Zep Tepi, the first time.
In the 13th century BC, the pharaoh Seti I was building his temple here in Abydos, when, according to some accounts, he had an encounter with the god Osiris.
When King Seti was building his temple, he had a dream in which the Egyptian god Osiris appeared to him. And he told Seti that if he was to dig behind his temple location, that he would find something of enormous significance. Seti digs 40 feet beneath the temple and finds the tomb of Osiris.
For hundreds of years, no such tomb was known to exist in Abydos. But at the turn of the 20th century, archaeologists digging behind the temple of Seti I unearthed a massive underground structure consisting of granite and sandstone blocks, some weighing nearly 60 tons. The Osirian, as it is now known, was found buried under 40 feet of silt. And ancient astronaut theorists are convinced that further excavations would reveal something much more profound hidden within it.
The interesting thing about it is that on the exterior wall of the Temple of Seti is inscribed what is called the head or tower of Osiris. What looks like some kind of an ancient antenna type of a device. It's clearly technological or mechanical looking. According to legend, it has been buried and is awaiting rediscovery.
That's a little heavy for most folks. And you might note that where there should be a picture of a black man, the European puts a white man in there. So, so we know throughout history, history's been twisted. Always white supremacy. White man has to be supreme in every instance. But if black people wake up to their real history and understand that the ancient Egyptians, people who started creation, were black people. What say ye, Leroy? None of this is a surprise to you.
Well, I'm thinking of the Ackerman. This guy is a billionaire. The one, he's a billionaire. And the Urban League just came out with the state of black people in America. Okay. And one of their conclusions is that it will take 180 years for the black family to catch up to the white family.
Financially?
And he is standing in a position symbolically for us, because in reality, they can't stop what is ordained to happen, and that is our rise as a people. But he's standing as a billionaire to block black people who can't live nowhere near his neighborhood, nowhere near anything. So what are they afraid of? I'm looking at the video piece here. They're afraid, they may be afraid. They may be afraid of the fact that black people will find out how great they are and begin to demonstrate it in terms of confidence, in terms of going after the things of life that we need to go after. And at the same time, they're fearful of their own children finding out how great we are beyond the basketball courts.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of looking at this guy or looking at an event. We have to go into the history as you so very well done, and then you have commentators like Brother Graham Witherspoon, who has this knowledge of black history that goes beyond where I'm at, okay, in terms of that. So the point that you would make, you say, hey, that's heavy for some of us, and it is if we don't study.
Right.
And I recommend to the audience to start their study with J.A. Rogers, World's Great Men of Color. And if you can get a copy of the book, Superman to Man, From Superman to Man, if you got through that little book, you are flying in terms of confidence, in terms of the ability to convey facts and more facts about black people's past and their present. But it's critical, these kind of discussions taking place on cable and YouTube when the show airs, because otherwise we won't know. We won't know what we're knowing from the Gilchrist experience. So those are some of my thoughts at this
Well, we all learn from experience. You and I lived in an era where we had no fears of anything. We knew our history, and we knew we were being bamboozled and lied to. You know, Jesus being a black man. I mean, that was a joke. But you know, Tarzan being the king of the jungle and all this other garbage that we grew up within the 50s.
Well, the thing is, when I'll talk about Leroy. It bothered me to see the black man in the Tarzan movies being afraid of the lion, and Tarzan say, where did he go? You understand? I mean, it bothered me to see, and then they have us big fat brothers who had given the roles to those brothers.
We were always a buffoons.
Oh man! But I bought into it. You went to see it. It wasn't the heroes that you were used to seeing, but those are the only black people on the screen, and then it gradually turned. But and I think Graham had a point. I just make this point. They have been planning and working at reversing the progress that blacks were beginning to make in the 60s on. They were, at that point, they were trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, because it was too powerful.
Trump is not the one who, he's not the one who did a number of things to set blocks in our way in this present time. Bush Jr.
Yeah.
Bush Jr., he did things in the Justice Department to remove prosecutors who had political affiliation but weren't playing behind that. In other words, because they were Republican, they take a certain role. These guys would gradually, in his 2 terms, he removed numbers of these individuals and replaced them with what I think the term is partisan political, these people who followed the political line. So it's not just Trump. Trump is part of a big picture, a bigger picture, and he appeals to their grassroots. But the white tie, not the white ties, the white shirts and the suits have people by individuals who are also against our rise. And it's not all of them, but it's enough of them. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, look, he said, white people will help you, but they'll help you in secret, lest their brothers will consume them.
Ah, okay.
They will help us, but they'll help us in secret. Unless their own brothers come down.
Well, they know more about our history than we do.
Amen.
And they hide our history. Or anytime they get part of it, they change it around to put them in the right place. So what I'm going to do here is 2 of my heroes, Martin and Malcolm, who who clashed in the 60s, 50s actually. But this is the way we always argued amongst each other. Come to find out, we were a team, and if we had stuck, if those two had teamed up, we'd be in a much better place. So just to show us having history not repeat itself, we know what we're up against now, so we have to prepare ourselves. Vote is the secret. Don't think your votes don't count. That's why they're trying to take it away. If it had no value, they wouldn't be trying to take it away from you. Wake up, black people. We have to vote for the least of the two evils. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but look what happens if Trump becomes president. I mean, look at the nonsense he's performed already. I mean, it's a joke. This has got to be a joke. Was this a big movie? God's just putting us through a bunch of changes to see if you have enough faith to stick to your own guns and learn about yourself. Look in the mirror and talk to the God that lies within you. And that's where your hope and future lies. You are the people we've been waiting for.
Exactly, right.
You're the heroes. You're the kings
That's
and
correct.
queens that we knew from the past. Now here, take a look at Malcolm and Martin, how they feuded back in the day. And this is the 60s, 63, I think it's maybe 62. I put the wrong date up. But play item 5.
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully, today Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attack of the Klan in that
Well,
day.
I don't think of love as, in this context, as emotional bosh. I don't think of it as a weak force. But I think of love as something strong and that organizes itself into powerful direct action. This is what I try to teach in the struggle in the South, that we are not engaged in a struggle that means we sit down and do nothing. That there's a great deal of difference between non-resistance to evil and non-violent resistance. Non-resistance leaves you in a state of stagnant passivity and deadened complacency, wherein non-violent resistance means that you do resist in a very strong and determined manner. And I think some of the criticisms of nonviolence, or some of the critics, fail to realize that we are talking about something very strong, and they confuse non-resistance with nonviolence.
The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to give Negroes a chance to sit in a segregated restaurant beside the same white man who had brutalized them for 400 years. The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to get Negroes to forgive the people who have brutalized them for 400 years by lulling them to sleep and making them forgetting what those whites have done to them. But the masses of black people in America today don't go for what Martin Luther King is putting down. As you said in one of your articles, it's psychologically insecure or something of that sort. I forget how you put it. But you didn't endorse what Martin Luther King was doing yourself.
I do not reject his goals of full integration and full equality rights for American citizens. Do you reject these goals?
If you don't think that he's walking on the right road, I'm quite sure you don't agree that he'll get to the right place. And if you would classify his method as psychologically unrealistic, I think that if a man's method is psychologically unrealistic, which means the road or the means or the method that he's using, I think as a psychologist, you would be very doubtful
I don't think
that
that's
he would reach the
true.
right.
If anyone has ever lived with a nonviolent movement in the South, from Montgomery on through the Freedom Rides and through the sit-in movement and the recent Birmingham movement, and see the reactions of many of the extremists and reactionaries in the white community, he wouldn't say that this movement makes, or this philosophy makes him comfortable. I think it arouses a sense of shame within him often, in many instances. I think it does something to touch the conscience and establish a sense of guilt. Now, so often people respond to guilt by engaging more in the guilt-evoking act in an attempt to drown the sense of guilt. But this approach certainly doesn't make the white man feel comfortable. It disturbs the other things, conscience, and it disturbs this sense of contentment. Nothing will.
You know, looking at this now, and in hindsight, you know, I remember that was I think that was earlier than 1963. I put that date up there, but I don't think that was a correct date. It might have been a little earlier than that. But I remember resenting Malcolm for calling Reverend Martin Luther King punk, or he's a punk. And that just turned me off of Malcolm. I didn't like that at all. But I wouldn't go down and sit in a counter and get hit in the head. I was ready to, I was a fighter. I mean, they were going down there getting hit in the head, and I was in the Marine Corps fighting crackers. All right, 60 to 64. So I didn't understand Martin's attitude. I couldn't have done that. But then you see later on what he performed, what he achieved. And Malcolm was right to a certain extent, but he was no Tom. But that was the only way to get the white man to understand, to see how ridiculous it was, with the dogs attacking the kids and the world seeing the abuse. We didn't know about that in the North. I mean, we did, but not to the extremism. It's like Emmett Till up in 55. We were sitting in the middle of Harlem. We're both Emmett Till's age, and we couldn't understand how they could kill Emmett Till like that. But what do you think, Rewa? Whose side were you on?
Well,
you in the middle too?
I'm going to pass that ball to Brother Graham. Because
well, oh, that's a hot potato.
No, but you were much younger. But you were much younger.
I was thinking, matter of fact, I wanted to go to the March on Washington. My mother said, "You're not leaving New York."
But how old were you?
I wanted to go, but she said, you ain't going nowhere.
How old were you in 2063? But you
14.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, so, but I remember I spoke with two reverends that work with Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Reverend Bill Jones from Bethany Baptist Church.
Oh, man, that voice.
One of the pillars of the black church. And Bill Jones stood at least 6'4", maybe 6'5".
Yeah, and that voice.
And he had that voice. The city, what good can come from the city? There was a man that came from the city of Nazareth. And we were talking one day on Fulton Street in Bed-Stuy, and Reverend Jones said to me, "You know, brother, the most knee-shaking time I ever had in my life was when we were in Cicero, Illinois, and Martin had talked about the white people in Cicero.
Oh, yeah.
And he thought that Southern white people were violent. Yeah. He said they had nothing on the white people in Cicero.
Yeah.
And Bill Jones said to me, Martin was a peaceful man, but I always carried my .38, and he patted his waistband. He said, Martin was peaceful. I wasn't going out. He said, I wasn't closing my eyes for prayer or nothing in Cicero, Illinois.
Yeah.
So Martin was well aware of, well, he had the threats, the FBI and all that stuff going on. But he was well aware, and I have mentioned before that all the men in the white coupees in the March on Washington in the photographs, they were members of the National Black Police Organization. So he wasn't standing up there trying to be a martyr. He didn't trust the state trooper any more than David Dinkins trusted NYPD when he was running for mayor. We guarded him when Jesse was running for president. We guarded Jesse along with the Secret Service here in New York. But both men, and we have to understand and always remember that there's more than one way to get to 125th Street. You can walk, you can take the bus, and there are a multiplicity of trains that you can take to get to 125th Street. So nobody has a lock on what Black people should do or how they should do it, but we should be moving in the same direction. The Voting Rights Act took almost 80 years to come to fruition. And even in that, you're still dealing with issues around voting.
Exactly.
We got the right to vote in the 14th Amendment, and that was in 1867. So why are we still running in circles over the same issues, talking about a John Lewis Voting Rights Act or whatever? As Martin said, just do what you put on the paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Do what you want to do. That's the Constitution he was talking about. And that was his last sermon. Well, what do we have to prove by all this is we had it once and it's been taken away now. It's trying to, so we have to restart and do all the peaceful things we're protesting, and the most important thing is voting. Vote for anything and get everybody you know, all you young people out there, it's your time to rise up and be human, a Black human, and understand your obligation to your ancestors, people who fought for 400 years to get you to the point that you're at now. This is 400 years of struggle. I'm talking about everybody from from voting age and below and up to whatever. Wherever you are at in life, we need you to stand up tall and be a human being and vote for what's right. I'm including everybody human, because that's what we're fighting against. People who are not human. Netanyahu and Gaza, that's not human. That can't be a human being. I mean, want to further, I mean, and the fight in Gaza that's a fight of God and the devil and people, period. There's nothing, and to have to fight so hard to get a ceasefire, this is what's so obnoxious about this.
You know, Winston, the situation in Ukraine,
it's just
they don't talk about it, but there are 25 million Black people starving to death in Africa right now because of the war in Ukraine.
The wheat.
Million. The wheat that was supplied to keep Black people alive is no more. And they're not talking and understand when the Congress fails to do what they should do, Black people are dying. And this is the backdrop to that particular situation.
See,
it is
Graham,
racist in its agenda. Just
Graham,
like the situation in Hamas, is racist. The Israelis intend to get the oil and the natural gas for themselves, and they're not going to have those people come back in that territory. They've already said they're going to expand the settlements. So this is definitely a genocidal move on the part of the Israelis.
That's right.
And even Senator Schumer has said enough is enough. It's inhumane and genocidal.
It's up to Biden if he wants the votes in November to stop it. That's in his court now. Biden has to stop all this, show him that he can be, that he's got our backs. Because you're right about Ukraine. People don't understand that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. That is the feeding grounds. The Soviets took over and killed I don't know how many millions of people when they took the grain away from the Ukraine in the 20s. There was a genocide by Stalin. So we got Putin coming back and trying to perform the same thing. And you're right, all that granary was going to the Africa. I mean, you know, I've forgotten about that. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Graham. People have to understand Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe and has the largest atomic, what is that called? What is it called? Graham?
I'm sorry?
The atomic energy plant that they have in there that's supplying electricity? It's the largest one in Europe. Atomic energy plant.
Oh, the one they were bombing around the perimeter of the...
Now, if he's,
yes, and there's another thing.
They're threatening to bomb that.
It has to do with the Congo. I can't remember, I lost my thought. But the Congo is where the 25 million people are dying. Oh yeah, the guy that was the general, the commander for that military mercenary group that was working for Putin.
Wagner.
And the Wagner group.
Wagner.
They are in the Congo. They are in the Congo enslaving black people right now.
Okay.
Right now, they're still extracting minerals from the Congo. So Putin is not being dealt with. The welfare of millions of black people is hanging in the balance because of what Putin is doing, not just economically, but socially.
And we can change
the enslavement of the people and the starvation of the people, and the United States is doing absolutely nothing.
Well, we have to rise for the occasion and getting people to vote. That's the only answer.
Voted on the local level. How come we're not hearing congressmen, congresswomen sharing what Brother Graham has shared with us? You don't hear them say anything. At least come to a church in the black community and share with us what's going on.
There's so many problems going on, so many different...
But you don't hear them talk about any problem. They're not... Black Congress people not talking about, based on what and I'm talking about reading and listening to media, you don't hear an Adam Clayton Powell. You just don't hear.
People don't have that same kind of energy that we had.
They're getting
paid.
Gentlemen,
I have to go. I have to teach a class. So I've got to drop out.
Okay.
God willing, I'll be back next week.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, brother.
Okay. Peace. God bless.
So roll that last roll in I've got there. And we'll be right back at you. What was it, number
2? Traditional African religions, particularly the one from ancient Egypt and Sudan, venerated this idea called Ma'at. And Ma'at, roughly speaking, you could translate it as truth. as justice, as righteousness, as reciprocity. The problem is when you're being attacked by people who don't believe any of that, and you are trying to do the Ma'atic thing, they will beat you, unfortunately. And this is one of those harsh lessons that the black community is still to learn.
The assumption that another group's view of humanity is the same as ours. The assumption that another group's understanding of divinity is the same as ours. The African moved from the premise that everybody was a brother, and thus should be treated and accorded that kind of brothership and brotherhood. The European moved from a position that what is mine, and what is yours is mine if I can take it. You had a war culture coming in contact with an agrarian culture. The war culture is always going to win, because the war culture doesn't put any value on human life. And that means it has no barometer to how much death and destruction it will carry out.
People talk about the greatness of Africa, and we see some of the great empires that we had over in Africa. And naturally, a lot of people will say, okay, if we had all these great empires, where did Africa go wrong? There's several situations that happened. One thing that happened with Africa, you had Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa, according to most historians, West African black man who was a king in the area that we know as Mali and Timbuktu, the wealthiest man to ever live. And Mansa Musa's situation was a gift and a curse, because Mansa Musa, he went around the world basically just giving out gold. This man had so much money, he could give money away. And he gave so much money out, it decimated certain economies in other nations. So it showed the humanity of the African people and the generosity of the African people, but you showed people that you had all of this wealth, so now people are plotting on you. So when people saw Mansa Musa giving out all that money, he became lunch to everybody else. So Africa started to get raided and flooded with all types of people trying to take advantage of the wealth and the resources that were in Africa.
The tide rises and falls. I mean, what are we talking about? We're not supposed to be a victim of time. When you're going into Africa when it was falling, when it was old and worn out, trying to nurture and educate the East Indians, the Chinese, and the Europeans. We were trying to help all of these people to raise them up to a higher level, and they wore us out. Even today, you'll get worn out if you talk to a certified Negro under warranty. They will wear you out.
We didn't take military matters seriously. We didn't take warfare seriously. And I'm aware that the propaganda where the West presents such as the Zulus as a highly militaristic nation. Unfortunately, we needed a lot more Zulus and a lot more people on that militaristic thing, because historically that's where we were weak.
I don't know why Nubia fell, besides all nations fall. Rome fell, Greece fell, the current empires you're in are going to fall and new superpowers are going to come. So yeah, we failed. Kings died. Other people mishandled money. The same thing that happened with your grandmama inheritance after she died. The same thing. Some of your cousins went and wilded out with it. The other of your cousins took it and created their own little things. Same thing happened, but the question is, how do we create in Israel? How do we create in India? How do we create a Germany? How do we create something for us? Because we need something. You know, Dr. John Henry Clark was like, we're yelling that we want a nation, and it's nation time, and we don't even know how to build a train.
Amen.
We've built a nation, America. Look how dedicated and giving we are, after all we've been through, because we have God in our lives. We're not that demon that that they were talking about. That warlike person, the ones raised in caves when we were building pyramids. I mean, the European has always been dominant and controlling and taking what he wanted. Look what he's done to Africa. Look what he did to America.
After
the Indians were docile.
After he got out of Europe, he was contained. And then last week we talked about the Moors. Mm-hmm. When the Moors were kicked out of Spain, 1492, that's when they were unleashed to the world.
Yeah.
They were contained up to that point in time.
Right.
So when they get out, one of the things that they did was take a whole continent of black folks, plant them here, and make us dumb to knowledge of self.
Right.
And still we survived that. Today we're here, ready to give birth to a nation of our own.
That's right. But
We built theirs.
It's ours. It's not theirs, it's ours. We built this country.
And that is correct. And that
Okay.
is the point that I'm trying to make, is to look at the fact that we built this nation, and also look at how we have to think mentally in terms of being a nation within a nation, so that we can work on a united basis to harness our power and energy to survive what they have planned for us. That's the point. It's not divorcing ourselves from having built what we built. In fact, the humanity of America is demonstrated, has been demonstrated, or let me put it this way, the humanity that's supposed to be in America has been forced to be humane, coming from the protests of black people in America. The civil rights period, not only did we move some inches, but other groups known as Caucasians who were out on the out, they have moved. And now they are in a position where they're blocking us.
Yeah.
Intentionally blocking us. You say, why are you blocking us, man? Your people rode on the coattails of black people in the civil rights movement forging ahead. You were on the coattails of that. You get in a position. See, when I was in corporate America, when I entered corporate America, there were certain positions in corporate America that was denied certain Caucasian groups of people.
Irish
they were
and
denied.
Italian.
Now, with the civil rights movement, they came into those positions. But they had been, you wouldn't know this if you weren't in corporate America. I didn't know it, but I saw where certain groups, and read where certain groups were blocked from positions within corporate America. So the bottom line is voting, but we have to increase the vote. We have to increase the bodies who are not thinking about being registered. That's what we have, what I feel we have to do.
That's our job as elders.
And bring out our young children, young teenagers to the NAN
huddle
convention coming up in a few weeks, to baptize them in a movement, a very, very benign movement, a friendly movement of black people who want to go get ahead. And this is an opportunity for my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and others who otherwise would not go to a convention. But a convention, we need to baptize our young people in that kind of event. It only comes along once a year.
Yeah. Well.
So we're gonna do it. We're gonna increase the number of our young people coming to the meeting.
That rolling I don't have for the convention. This is a difficult time, and every year we have a convention at National Action Network's convention at the New York Sheraton, 711 7th Avenue, 53rd and 7th Avenue. And this year I don't have a list of the, I wasn't prepared to do this, but I think I have a list of some of the items that we're having, but
they're going to have
I don't have it available, so we'll have to bear with that.
But they can tune into on WLIB on WLIB
This is
on
terrible.
Sunday, no, Saturday morning to pick up Sharpton's weekly presentation, and they can also tune in to KISS on Sunday at 9 o'clock. 9 to 10, Sharpton is on.
We'll have to bypass that. Well, just, can we stop for a minute?
Well, now you know, we can, National Action Network, they can go into Google, National Action Network. Those who are in Harlem can come on Saturday morning to the National Action headquarters on 145th Street, right off Malcolm X Boulevard. And that would be at 9 o'clock.
All right. Tune in later, and I'll run a piece on this. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist experience.
Amen.
God bless you. Tune in.